Welcome to Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, back again with another episode, y'all. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about somebody that I've known for a while. He told me this about 10 years ago. He had been diagnosed with cancer and that he didn't have that much longer to live. He was going to try the chemo to see if it would help, but he wasn't sure himself if it was going to do any good, but he was willing to try it. So I'm going to share that story with you and hope that it gives you some insight into, the realities of life when it comes to this prison thing, especially when you get sick in here. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Yeah, my partner, he had this is this conversation that I had. It's probably, like I say, over 10 years ago, and it brought something happened today that brought this back up to me. I was looking at some guys on my way to work today that were going up and down the sidewalk back to the hospital, and we got a lot of guys here that get dialysis treatment and cancer treatment and things like that. And I don't know what it was, but today when I was looking at them walk up and down the sidewalk, some of them struggling to walk, it dawned on me that, and don't get me wrong, I've seen other people die in prison, heard about them, whatever, but it dawned on me that dying in prison is a reality for a lot of people. There's just nothing that you can do about it, no matter what your sentence is, right? And the story that I'm about to share with you is so relevant in this situation because uh, even though my partner didn't have an out date that was anywhere close to him getting out, he started to face up to a lot of things when he was told that there was nothing much that they can do. So let me just tell you about it. He's in his 50s now. He should be now in his 60s. He should be in his 60s now because he was 50, 53, 54 then. So he should be about 63, 64. I don't know if he passed away or not because he's not at this facility. But we had this conversation over 10 years ago. And it was a hard conversation for him to have with me because he told me, when he had gotten diagnosed with the cancer, they had taken him out to the hospital and had the surgery. And he said while he was at the hospital, everything was great. He said that he stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks. And that right there was a shock to me that he told me he stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. But he stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks, had the surgery, getting treated. And he said those 2 weeks, out of the last 20 plus years, close to 30 plus years, he said they were the best 2 weeks in his life during that time frame. But not before he got locked up, but while he had been locked up. Those were the best 2 weeks of his life while he was at the hospital being treated for cancer. And he said that it was the best 2 weeks of his life because he said they treated him like he was a human being. He said the nurses were nice to him. Even though he was handcuffed to the bed, he said they treated him like a human being. They fed him good. He got to watch TV. Those small things that a lot of people take for granted, he didn't take for granted. He really appreciated it. He appreciated every time one of the nurses had to come. This is what he's telling me. Had to come to his room to change his bedpan. He appreciated when they helped him stand up to walk or move around. He appreciated them when they came to the room to bathe him. He told them thank you. He really started to see life differently from what he told me. And he said when they brought him back to the prison, he said all of that changed. He said because when they brought him back to the prison, they had to put him in a cell. So he was no longer in a hospital bed. He was in a prison hospital bed, in a prison cell. And he said that did something to his mind, and his health went back downhill. He thought he was on the path of recovery. He was feeling good about life. But being back at the prison made him almost, as he put it, give up. And while he was in that cell and getting treated like any other person in prison, he felt as though his life didn't matter. So he started to think about all of the things that he had done in his life, all of the things that he wished he would have done in his life, and he started to regret a lot of the decisions that he made. Him catching cancer, that's what it took for him to realize that the decisions that he had been making in his life were all wrong. He knew from his upbringing that he shouldn't be doing it, but he rationalized like a lot of people do, telling himself that, this is who I am, this is what I have to do to survive. The animal that he became, he rationalized in his mind that it was right to do until he couldn't do it anymore. His health was declining. He couldn't work out like he used to. He couldn't lift weights like he used to. And when they released him from the prison hospital and put him back in the housing unit, he had to have people help him get around. He was in a wheelchair for a while, so he had somebody pushing him. But having to depend on somebody else to take care of you in this environment is frightening. Because at any time, they can decide that they're not going to push you to the ball field. So you got to roll yourself up there, or you don't go. Or they can decide that when nobody's watching, to smack you, abuse you. Nothing you can do. And it scared him. So he started to think about all of the people that he had done wrong to in his life. All of the things that he had done to people when they were in their most vulnerable state. Like he told me, in his situation, the chickens had come home to roost. And he started to feel and understand all the things that he had done to people. So he wanted to figure out a way to make amends. So he started going through all of his property, looking for addresses to people that he had long ago stopped writing. People that he had cut out of his life, not because he no longer loved them, but because he had become so consumed with the life of a criminal, the lifestyle of a criminal, that he didn't bother to keep those contacts. He felt he was never getting out, so his life was here. And that's what it was going to be. So now, as he was looking through all of the old mail and finding these letters with these addresses on it, he didn't even realize that some of them, as he told me again, that some of those addresses may not be any good after all this time. And so he wrote them anyway. He got one of the counselors to pull up one of his old phone lists from a decade or so ago, so he could see if the phone numbers that he had on his list, the phone numbers that he had forgotten because he hadn't used them, if they still worked. So he got permission from the counselor to call these people, and when they answered the phone, they didn't even recognize his voice. He didn't even recognize their voice. But at the end of the day, he was able to talk to some family members he hadn't talked to in decades. And he apologized for his behavior. One of his family members was his victim, his crime victim. He assaulted one of his family members to the point where he almost died. And against the rules and against the law, he had his cousin call his relative, his victim, so he could apologize. And she did. And on the three-way, he learned that his cousin had forgiven him years ago. Everybody had. But because he had given up and cut everybody off, he didn't know that. They've been wanting to visit him. They've been wanting to see him, but he didn't know that because he cut them off. He had given up on himself. And now his health was declining. They thought they had gotten all the cancer. He thought they had gotten all the cancer. That's what they told him. So when he went back to the clinic for his checkup with the doctors, they told him that he was going to have another surgery, another round of chemo. But they didn't think that it was going to do any good. They said it'd add a few months maybe to his life. He agreed. They took him out to the hospital, performed the surgery, chemo. A few months later, he was back. He didn't want to go to the prison hospital. He asked them to take him right back to his cell. He wanted to be around people now because he knew that his life was coming to an end. And when I saw those young men and older men today using walkers to get up and down the sidewalk, it really brought home to me that life is short. It's too short. And to be involved in a lifestyle that doesn't appreciate life, that doesn't respect the rights of other people, it stood out to me today in a way that it hadn't before. I don't want people to be put in a situation where they are about to die before they realize that they want to live. That's what happens when you take on this criminal lifestyle. You think that you're living, but you're not. You think that you're living, but you're not. You're not living when you're causing pain to other people. You're not living when you take the life of another person. You're existing wrapped in a ball of anger, ready to lash out at any and everybody, justifying it by saying that I've been mistreated, I've been done wrong. It's not an excuse. It's not an explanation. It doesn't explain it away. You can't make it right because you've been through something. I get it, though. I get it. But we have to find a way, y'all, to help people understand that life is precious. Everybody's life is precious. And putting somebody in prison sometimes is a necessary thing. But prison shouldn't be the only way that we get people's attention. We have to love each other, y'all. As hard as that may seem, we have to love each other. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that. But today, with what I saw, when I saw those young men walking up and down, some of them are young. I'm talking about in their 20s, y'all. Going up and down this sidewalk, needing dialysis because their kidneys have failed. Imagine that, 20 years old, 22 years old, and you need to be on a dialysis machine 3 times a week. Or you're going to die. What was he doing that caused his kidneys to shut down? I talked to a couple of them, and they said they were alcoholics, 22 years old. It's amazing to me. But when you are caught up in living this lifestyle and you're going through all kind of ups and downs, you think that alcohol is going to do it. So you abuse it. It makes you forget. But the price of you forgetting is the loss of an organ. It's not worth it. So I wanted to share that with y'all today. I wanted to share that story with you. Because this young brother, well, like I said, he's not young anymore. He's older than me, but he's still, if he's still alive. it took him. Well, actually, no, I take it back, y'all. I think he has passed away. Somebody told me that. It just jumped into my head that he has passed away. Yeah, he has passed away. And I hope that he got all of his affairs in order before he did. But he died in prison like so many of us may do one day. Yeah, and there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is live life in a way that it was intended to be lived, loving each other. With that said, I'm going to wrap this up. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.